A spectacularly fast fall from grace. Just one game as England's manager, and Sam Allardyce has had to leave the pitch, red-carded and red-faced.
On reflection, silly thing to do, but just to let everybody know, I sort of helped out what was somebody I'd known for 30 years, and unfortunately it was an error in judgment on my behalf, and I paid the consequences.
Allardyce resigned after an undercover investigation by the Daily Telegraph newspaper. A reporter posing as a representative of a fictitious Far East firm caught him on camera giving advice on how to get around Football Association rules on player transfers.
You know, entrapment is one on this occasion, and I have to accept that.
The Telegraph's investigation accuses 8 current or former Premier League managers for receiving so-called bungs for player transfers. Here's how a bung may happen. Manager B wants to buy a player from Manager A's club for a certain amount, say $10 million. This is negotiated by an agent on behalf of the player. Now, Manager A may say they'll only take the deal if there's a little something extra for them. So the transfer fee gets inflated to, say, $12 million. Then, when the agent takes their 10% fee, they pay Manager A's kickback to an intermediary, all completely off the books. The English Premier League is the world's richest football competition, and it's only getting richer, thanks to a $13.49 billion cash injection from a new TV licensing deal this year. This season's summer transfer window broke records, with $1.51 billion spent. With even more cash available to change hands, does this open the league up to even more temptation for corruption? This is the latest corruption scandal to hit professional football. The sports world governing body FIFA has been hit by one scandal after another, involving those at the highest level. And this is a major blow for England's Football Association, which had positioned itself as a body that was the future and integrity of the game. Its former chairman, Greg Dyke, blasted FIFA for having a culture of corruption for 40 years. But in light of these accusations, it would seem the FA may not be immune to that culture. Is corruption just an endemic part of the business of football? And is there a way to clean up the beautiful game? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Elliot Ross joins me now from New York. He's a football writer and researcher at Columbia University. Good to talk to Elliot. So, poor Big Sam, he had a 100% win record and then he lost his job. Were you shocked at these revelations from the Telegraph involving Big Sam and involving everybody else?
Not particularly, Imran, to be honest with you. If you've followed football, English football, European football over a number of years, it's not really a surprise to hear that there are backhanders, or at least people trying to make backhanders of this kind.
So can we say that this is endemic, but made much worse because of the bonanza TV money that's been coming in?
Well, actually, I think you might be able to say the opposite. There is a problem, obviously, with money in football, but the one thing you'll hear particularly from people who are close to the game in England, say in the 1970s, 80s, even early 90s, was that it was much worse in those days. There is an argument that, in fact, the game is a little bit cleaner, specifically around the issue of bungs. And there are these accusations coming out now about these 8 unnamed managers who are said to have been the kind of people who might have accepted a bung. But you and I will both remember when George Graham lost his job as the manager of Arsenal in the 90s as a result of a proven bung.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's a fresh perspective, because we'd had this idea that it's just getting worse. Are you convinced that we've crossed this threshold, right? That might be the crucial difference between, say, arrogant men just sort of shooting off their mouths after a couple drinks, being slightly entrapped by these journalists, and actual criminal activity taking place? Or is it a murky sort of gray area in between?
It is a murky gray area, and I'm very loath to criticize the journalists. You know, this kind of investigative work is very difficult to execute. And I think what they've shown is that what they've illustrated is a certain kind of culture that still exists within the game.
Yeah, what have we learned about the role of the agents?
Well, the role of the agent, I think the role of the agent is always going. There are these in-between figures who operate in a sort of difficult area between clubs, between players, and they're always trying to gain a certain kind of advantage. It's an extremely competitive field. I think this week, though, one thing to do in terms of keeping this in perspective is to remember the kinds of figures here that are involved are really small bore compared to the kinds of money that is being taken out of the game by some of your bigger, more prominent agents. If you think about the Pogba deal, for example, that went through over the summer, you're not talking about £5,000 in an envelope here and there. You're talking about a huge fee estimated by some people upwards of 10, 15, even 20 million going to an agent completely legitimately. And that's why I say that although there's a debate going on right now about transparency, I think there's a bigger issue here about commercialization and money in football in general and how to manage this at the kind of broader level. I don't think transparency would really make football and its relationship to money really any more edifying.
Right. And compare this finally for us, Elliot, to the FIFA bribery and corruption scandal. How does this compare and relate to that?
And well, the thing that it immediately reminds me of is the fact that from a fan's perspective, none of this matters a great deal. People were always wondering whether these succession of FIFA scandals were going to poison the game and make people kind of disillusioned with it and less interested. The thing that football administrators, whether they're straightforward and honest or whether they're on the make, have that's hugely in their favor is they have this product which people just can't shake their interest in and their addiction to. So will it affect the Premier League? I would say unlikely in terms of the appeal that it has around the world. People watch the Premier League not in order to know that they're engaging in some kind of like ethical, transparent culture, but in order to be entertained.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suspect that isn't going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, that hunger is not going to go away. Elliot Ross, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.